Uridium and Paradroid, two painfully difficult games by Andrew Braybook for the original Commodore 64 computing system. These are sci-fi oriented games. Uridium is a space shooter. Paradroid is somewhat of an action adventure. We'll get into the details in just a minute. But these games have had many iterations and sequels throughout the years. I actually have memories from these games, not from the original Commodore 64, but from a plug-and-play device that I actually purchased back when I worked at KB Toys. I remember I got it for about 20% off. I bought one for myself, one for John. Unfortunately, the one I got for John was during Christmas where someone was gifted a PS2. Everyone played that, and John lost his that day, never to be seen again. But today we're not talking about the originals. We are talking about two long-lost sequels for the Game Boy Advance, both released by Forest of Illusion and dumped by March42. Username March42. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Now, before we get into those, let's go ahead and talk about the original games. This is Uridium, or possibly Uridium. I'm not quite sure. It is a fictional element that's utilized as the name of the last level in this particular game, with every previous level being named after an actual, real, metallic substance. Now, this is a back and forth scrolling space shooter. It is tough as nails, but basically you have to clear your path and then land your ship. I am clearly very, very bad at it. I'm not great at most shmups, but I'm particularly bad at this one. Also, I've never really cared for shmups where you can go back and forth. For example, like Fantasy Zone, just could never get into. I don't know why. I think I just prefer the ride or die screen scrolling mentality where I don't have to be accurate and correct mistakes. But alas, that is just me. Regardless, though, this has quite the cult following and, of course, has merited a number of sequels throughout the years. Obviously, the Game Boy Advance one, like I mentioned, did not come out. But that is this particular title. Let's go ahead and take a look at the GBA version, or the would-be GBA version by Tin Tiger. You're going to notice that this particular game is very similar. Feels a little bit less like a sequel, more like a remake. As you can see here, the first level is Zinc. And it feels and plays very similarly, albeit with a significant amount of polish. Here I'm going pretty slow because you can go quite fast, but then you just end up running into a bunch of stuff. Luckily, unlike the original game, at least in this first level, instead of just crashing into the walls, they very mercifully have bumpers on them that you can just bounce off of so you don't instantly die like you can in the Commodore 64 version. But alas, that doesn't make me any better at this version, just, well, maybe a little better. I can survive a little bit longer. But another nice aspect of this particular version is that it has a password system. Here I'm jumping right to the last level, Uridium, or however it's supposed to be fictionally pronounced, and this is the last level of the game. Again, you're going to notice that every level here is pretty similar. I mean, the spaceship, where you dock, the background, they're different, but the layout is kind of all functionally the same. It's a horizontal plane you go back and forth on. Here's the lithium level. Again, it's all pretty similar, just with a difficulty scale that, of course, adjusts based on what level you're on. Here's an example of how your ship can get pretty out of control if you go quickly, which is a real detriment in the C64 version because you would just end up going fast and then crash into something. Here, it's a little bit more merciful. Next up, we have Paradroid, and again, this is the C64 version. This is a very interesting title. It's sort of an action-adventure. You are a robot, a droid of some sort. You can see that you are labeled 001, and the other robots in the vicinity have higher numbers than you. You can do a couple different things with these. You can attack them with your lasers, or you can try to take them over, which gives you a little mini-game, which I don't understand and always get destroyed with. But that said, basically the idea of the game is for you to go around, increase your number, and try to survive as long as you can. Here's an example of one of the mini games here, which are much easier and more understandable in the GBA version. Obviously, I'm very much a beginner at this particular title, so I'm sure there are people out there that would find this a lot easier than I would, but I'm not even quite sure what to do here. I know I have to try to maximize my colors here and outdo the other droid, but the higher the number, the harder it is, and this thing just basically destroyed me. There are also different floors, different levels that you can go on with different strength of robots that you can fight or try to take over. It's a very interesting game. I think it's definitely more complex and, in my mind, would have a little more longevity than Uridium, and it's definitely a big cult classic, but needs a lot of polish. And here we have Paradroid. The GBA version is a nice enhancement from the original. Everything is functionally the same in terms of your strategy and goals, but with the polish you'd expect from a much more modern system. There's a bit of finickiness regarding the camera and movement, but aside from that, it's very playable. And there's also a version that includes both games in one pack. I'm assuming the developer guessed that these old retro games by themselves maybe wouldn't be enough of a draw, and they needed to do a bit of a multi-pack to encourage people to purchase, which of course never happened anyways. So that is it for Uridium and Paradroid. I hope that you enjoyed this little episode here. Again, you can check both of these out on Forest of Illusion, and again, big thank you to March42 for sending them over for release. And in the meantime, I'm going to jump back to my Commodore 64 plug and play the originals a little bit more because, by God, playing these via emulator on my computer with a keyboard just didn't feel right. It felt very odd. Aside from that, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. If you liked it, please subscribe, hit that notification bell, all that good stuff, and hope to see you all next time.